So everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here. Like I said, my name is Ira, and I will be hosting the webinar today. With us, we so I work on the Berlin campus for recruitment. And the main part of my job is to travel and talk to students and get to know them a little bit better and try and recruit them into our bachelor program. And so today I'm talking to you about the career opportunities post ESCP. I will now quickly introduce our guest speaker who's with us here today, Felix Heumann. Felix, thank you again for joining us. Your insights are extremely valuable to our students. And I will just give you a second so that you can tell us a little bit about, oops, just a second.
It's just for enlarging the screen, I think, the question.
Yeah, unfortunately, my screen is glitching a little bit.
Yeah, I think they'll get the idea. Anyways, in the meantime, while you're figuring out the tech, I'll just take over. So yeah, as Ira said, my name is Felix. I'm a graduate from ECP from 2020 in the bachelor program. So I followed the Paris, Turin, Berlin track. It was actually the first year that we had B1 in Paris, that was an option. I know applicants now have a lot more options available for the modularity of campus. I was quite involved in the student life at ESCP, so any questions you have about that, please feel free to ask those in the chat. I would also encourage you just in general to already start putting questions in now, because it'll make it a lot easier when the Q&A gets going, so we don't have to wait around while you're still typing. Since graduating from ESCP, I've been working mostly in consulting. I was at EY in Munich for a while. I went on to do a master's degree at another business school at INSEAD, and now I'm a strategy consultant at Roland Berger in the Middle East. So also any questions you have about either consulting, Middle East, careers in Germany or Europe in general in consulting, feel free to put it my way. Yeah.
Just a second, let me try and thank you, Felix, first of all, for introducing yourself. Let me just try and share my screen again.
Yeah, so I know Grace has already answered the question in the chat, but there was a question basically asking what's the indicative rate of bachelor graduates who go on to do the MIM at ECP? And yeah, as she pointed out, it's not really recommended to do the MIM afterwards. There's some overlap in the curriculum on one hand, and on the other hand, it's not the basically route to go. So the BSc is not a replacement of like the French PREPA system where you would go afterwards to do a MIM. So it makes more sense to do the MIM if maybe you studied something a bit more technically in your undergrad or at a different university. And it's also always good just to get, two different environments. So either if you want to stay at ECP after your bachelor's, then there's specialized masters that can be a good choice, for example, in sustainability or in strategy and digital business. But going for the MIM is not what the program is built to do.
Yeah. No, I completely agree because they tend to be two generic programs, one after another. So we always recommend our students to actually do a specialized master or a master at a completely different university like Felix did. So now that the tech is figured out, we can move ahead and get started with the webinar. Okay. For some reason, I can't go ahead with these. Aha, there we go. Okay. So just to get us started, I would like to talk a little bit about the career service activities that we offer at ESCP Business School. So our objective is to make sure that students are actually able to be job ready by the time that they graduate. And so for this to happen, we offer CV and cover letter workshops to our students. We also offer how opportunities on how to develop your digital reputation. So how to access your LinkedIn, how to expand your LinkedIn, how to make sure that you are visible on LinkedIn, essentially. Followed by this, we also teach students and help students create their job applications. So the tools, platforms, best practices, etc., all of these are covered by our career office. Um, and finally, once you have an interview offer or, an invitation to an interview, we also help you create an elevator pitch and prep you for this job interview. So this is our way of making sure that you feel confident before you start working. And so before you start even applying to jobs. And so we give these opportunities to you right when you enter ESCP. To move on, we actually have a slide about student societies, which I will let Felix talk about because he has been an ex-student and he's also been very involved in student societies.
Yeah, so student societies is, I think, an important part of your study journey. I myself, I was the president of Agora, which you see on the right, which is the school student union. I was also member of the board of directors of the school. So I was building together with, the school senior leadership, the strategy and strategic vision of the school moving forward. Which was really a great opportunity. So you work together with other student representatives. You work together with the students to on the one hand represent their opinions and their desires towards the school's leadership, but also a great opportunity to really get ingrained in the community, be it in fundraising, which is a vital part of a business school, or be it just building the strategic vision and making the school your own. So, there's different pillars to the school. One of them is obviously the students, but they're very intertwined. And so at ECP, you're really encouraged to build the school that is your own. And you can do that, through a range of student societies. So, for example, here you have Oikos, which is, a very flourishing society related to sustainability topics. We have JET, which is like a junior enterprise. So they're consulting basically different businesses. So you get your first consulting experiences there. And that's also cross-campus societies. So they basically have like a regional office at each of the campuses of ESCP. And that's a really great opportunity to get involved. There's different societies, like a plethora, not all of them are shown, about diversity at ECP. Obviously, with so many nationalities, present, that's and also different cultures. That's something that's very important. So, for example, there's societies related to promoting women in business, or Escape, which is related to diversity that you can join. So there's basically something for everybody. Some of them are a little bit more fun-loving and organizing events. Other of them are a little bit more maybe career or subject-driven. But yeah, generally there's something for everyone. As the slide says, there's over 50 on the different campuses. And if there's something that doesn't exist yet, you can always go ahead and create it yourself.
Absolutely. Actually, this is really helpful. Thank you, Felix. And what he said towards the end, which is that if you see something that is missing, you are always more than welcome to reach out to us and start a student society. We always love this entrepreneurial attitude. And so if you have an idea, please bring it to the table. Now, to move on, I would like to talk a little bit about the two opportunities that we have that are a part of our curriculum. So we have internships as well as social impact projects. So the internships, we have a 20-week mandatory internship requirement over 3 years, which means that you will have to complete 20 weeks in internships before you can graduate. And these internships can be done in any company that you would like. We have a lot of industries, roles, and countries belt. You are, free to choose some of the companies that we already have partnerships with. You're welcome to help us create new partnerships with companies. So any ideas that you have are always welcome, and you are free to choose any role in any country that you desire. We also offer Erasmus Plus funding for internships in Europe, and The internship offers are magnificent. There's 7,000 plus internships that you can do. And the best part is that these opportunities are shared by all ESCP campuses. We also have a social impact project, which is a volunteer service or a humanitarian mission. This is completely different from the internship, but you can do this in the first or second year, and this actually gives you very different skills as compared to the internships.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of a related question, which was about employment data. On that one, we do have some employment data. I don't know all of it, but employment rate is 98% after the program. So just throwing that one in there real quick. And also we have something about fields. I'm not sure if we publish earnings levels. School would have to answer that one, but there you go.
Yeah, we have a 98% placement rate. I will also talk a little bit about the split of these two further in the slides. So if there's any questions about that, it's coming up. So just to kind of give you an idea about where our students end up after graduating. So these are some of the companies. Again, the screen is small, the slides are small. We can't publish everything. Of course, feel free to reach out to us and we would be able to help you out with a bit more information about this. But just to give you an idea, these are some of the companies that our students work at. And in terms of the specific company departments, we have finance, IT, marketing, management, sales. These are all of the companies that our students eventually, these are all of the industries and departments that our company students actually end up working at after graduating. So we also have various entrepreneurial activities, and here I would really like to highlight one part of our ESCP campuses, which is the Blue Factory. The Blue Factory is our in-house incubator where you can actually reach out to them with an idea that you have for a startup, and they will actually guide you through the different processes of actually starting your own startup. So the seed to the elevator pitch to finding investors to gathering investment, funding and things like that. All of this is covered by the Blue Factory. And on the Berlin campus, you can actually get funding through the Exist scholarship that you can apply for. As a part of the Blue Factory, they also arrange a lot of events. We are able to actually tell you a little bit about the different startups that we have in Berlin, and you are actually able to reach out to them, talk to them, get to know them a little bit better. And this is arranged by the Blue Factory. Yeah, and as we were talking about before, I think there was a question about the placement rate. So we actually have a 98% placement rate. 48% of our students actually start a professional career. But before that, just to kind of give you an idea, a placement rate essentially means how many of our graduates actually do something upon graduation. So we have a 98% placement rate, out of which 48% actually choose to start an international professional career, and 47 choose to start a master's degree. This master's degree, I already talked about the professional career that our students start. The master's degree, I will talk about here. So we actually have an overview of some of our universities that our students end up going to. As you can see, there's no, continent that isn't covered. Our students are pretty much everywhere. And they are doing their master's programs in all of these countries. Some of them are still concentrated within the EU, but we also have students who are in the US, Canada, and Australia. So there's a lot of opportunities post-graduation. And the other thing that I would make it a point to mention right now is that the ESCP degree is accredited by 5 higher education accreditations, which means that upon graduation from ESCP, the degree that you get is actually recognized, and the credits that you get is recognized in global universities. So you will not have to go through any third-party platforms to actually get your degree recognized in a university. You can simply just apply with the ESCP degree that you have. We have reached the end of our presentation. I will now open the floor for questions. I would prefer, if that's okay, to answer these questions live so that we can help out other students as well. And yeah, we can, any questions that come up, Felix is more than happy also to share his experience a little bit with being a student at ESCP and, going about finding opportunities in the future, and also about his internships and things like that.
Yeah, so I saw one question about entrepreneurship. So the question is, this person asked, they often hear about people getting good jobs after a bachelor's, but what's it like for entrepreneurs? So I think Ira already touched on that with the Blue Factory, which is the ESCP incubator, which help you to build your own company, as well the Exist Scholarship, which is very interesting. Essentially, the German government will give you like kind of a monthly salary depending on your level. I think if you're a bachelor graduate, it's like 1,000 euro a month or something like that they'll pay you for a year for a certain number of founders. So that and also they'll give you, I think, up to 30,000 of expenses for your company, which is basically a way of getting you set up. You'd have to check the precise details, but that's what it was like when I was studying there. And I do have some friends who did that Exist program. Another thing, this is actually something that I set up with my predecessor at the Student Union. We launched an award called the Innovation Prize, which if you're planning on doing a startup in EdTech, in education technology, there's an annual award that we do together with Blue Factory and the ECP Foundation. The ECP Foundation is basically responsible for the school's strategic positioning. So it's the fund that alumni such as myself would donate to in order to ensure the school's, strategies funding, and as well to basically, keep the community together, let's say. And so that's actually a prize that you can also go through, which we do with the Blue Factory. And at the end, you can get a bit of basically pre-seed funding for your startup. And then lastly, while it's not necessarily building your own startup per se to completely alone, there are certain programs. For example, APX from Axel Springer, they do like you go as a founder basically into their company. And so they call you entrepreneur in residence. A lot of my friends have done something like this, where you're hired by these companies and they will give you a portfolio company to manage. I also have one friend right now. She's working for Antler, which is a prominent venture capital fund. And she and basically a colleague of hers have a female-led startup that's supported by Antler that they're working on right now related to, I believe it's company retreats. So there are a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities. There's a couple of bachelor alumni now that have actually exited even startups. So they've gone through the whole cycle. So there is an entrepreneurial culture at ESCP. Although in the bachelor's, it's still a bit nascent because it's a bit easier to make a startup when you have a bit of work experience, either through internships or preferably even full-time employment. And so now a lot of my friends are starting to get more into the entrepreneurial side, but there are some people that start immediately.
Cool. Great. We have another question about the Blue Factory, and it's whether it's an open community, is it competitive, and if the guidance is free or requires additional costs. Felix, have you had some experience with the Blue Factory before?
Yeah, so I mean, I work closely with them more as a partner rather than as a mentee. The Blue Factory is always free. There are programs designed specifically for current students, and then there's programs that are designed for alumni. So the alumni programs, they're a little bit more all-encompassing, and it's a full-time program. I believe it's around 6 months to a year that it takes to go through this mentorship and acceleration program, basically incubation program. It is an open community, so they have a lot of events where you can just go and listen in on and maybe talk to them about your ideas. You can also set up one-on-one meetings technically with them. They're very easygoing bunch, very entrepreneurial. And is it competitive? That's a really good question. So some of their programs, especially the ones designed for alumni, you'll have to apply to them because there is limited spots. I'm not sure how competitive it is, but of course there's a lot of people applying since we have a big alumni base. But yeah, in general, it's going to be free. I don't know of any programs that cost, but it's always very easy to start a dialogue with them when you're, in your second or third year of the program, and then that will also, make it a little bit more easy to understand what they offer, what suits you, and also how to get into that.
Thank you. That's really helpful. We actually have a question about how to apply for a master's degree post-graduation. And if Felix, you can talk a little about how you kind of decided on a master's after, because I know you did it at INSEAD, and just reflect a little bit on your process.
Sure, sure. It's pretty funny because I sit on basically the like ambassador whatever committee for ESCP,
Yeah.
but the same thing also for my master's alma mater. So I'm actually also promoting that at ESCP to ESCP students. So in terms of applying for a master, usually you do it if you're going directly for a master and not working in between, which is a very I think German model. The Germans tend to like work for a year and then go do a master. If you're applying directly, usually you will start looking at universities in your third year of your bachelor's. There's some guidance there. So there's some master workshops that ESCP and the Career Center will host to basically, one, inform you of what are some good unis, especially the ones that typically ESCP grads go to. There's also support in doing the GMAT test. So especially for business schools, you'll need to do the GMAT test, especially for the more renowned ones. And so there's usually some tutoring opportunities and also just like an intro, what's the GMAT test, how do you prepare for it, etc. And then there's also some master events. So actually that's going back to, there's like top 10, top 20 universities that do come to ESCP, either live or online. That's, for example, what I'm doing with INSEAD as well, where, other top schools will come and they'll pitch their master's degree just as we're pitching our bachelor's right now. And they're partner schools, or they're schools that we have friendly relationships with. Higher education, in the end of the day, is a very small industry. It's a small world. And so it's always easy to get an introduction to someone, a recruiter there, so that they can answer your questions. But typically you'll apply in the fall or in the spring of your B3 year.
Thank you. We actually have a question about how many of the 48% of the graduates actually end up taking jobs outside their home country. Unfortunately, I don't have the data off the top of my head. However, Felix, can you just give a reflection a little bit about your classmates and like where they ended up? Because I know you are also,
Yeah, I live in Dubai
you
now,
left your
so
country. Yeah.
I'm not really in my
Yeah.
home country.
Yeah.
It's a great question. Again, I don't have any data except for anecdotal
Yeah.
evidence. There's a good mix. So there are some people that do go home to their home countries. I would say typically they are more the students that are from countries where we have a campus. So let's say Italian students tend to sometimes apply a lot to Milan, for example. French students do apply a lot to Paris, Germans to Germany, but there's also a very high proportion of people that are living, working, studying outside of their home country. I have some friends that are in Luxembourg, none of which are from Luxembourg. There's a good base of bachelor students from my year now in Dubai, actually, who I meet up with regularly. So you do see people going to international markets. One friend of mine, he's working in Singapore since I think 3 years now already, so since quite some time. So there is a good mix. I would say there is a proclivity to staying in Europe. There's a lot of students that go and work in Europe because we have a great base of partner companies, which makes it easier to find jobs. But nonetheless, people tend to be very international, and a lot of non-European students use ESCP as a way of entering the European job market. Yeah.
Thank
So I
you.
hope that kind of answers the question
And
at least.
yeah, no, definitely. Just very quickly, we haven't got this question, but I had a follow-up question. Could you tell us a little bit about the language barriers? Like, were you able to kind of use English and go through, or did you have to know additional languages as well?
So I think knowing additional languages is highly useful. That's also, I would say, one of the USPs of ESCP, that you get to learn several languages. I don't know as of date how many you can actually choose from or etc. But now, I mean, I'm fluent in German, English, and French, and my Italian is pretty serviceable, although I would not want to work in Italian. But certainly it enabled colleagues of mine from ESCP to get jobs. There's some markets and some industries which are more open to English only. and some less so. So, for example, the smaller countries in Europe, specifically Switzerland, Luxembourg, Benelux, etc., they will typically let you work in English. Germany, and especially industries such as consulting in Germany, are very traditional, and they do want you to work in German, or at least know some level of German. So if you choose ESCP, it's really advisable to then, if you already know, hey, I want to work in France and I'm not a French speaker, or I want to work in Germany and I'm not a German speaker, to maybe start taking that early on and to take it seriously and to really study, because it will be a big value add. And on the other hand, there is, especially any startups and scale-ups are usually very, very flexible on language, where it's very helpful if you speak a European language, just to communicate with clients, etc. But they usually let you just speak English.
Yeah, and this is also a great opportunity, as Felix already mentioned, to talk about the fact that ESCP also offers language classes. So we have language classes on our campus that you should definitely take use of. It's a mandatory part of our curriculum to actually learn a new language. I'm not sure if we answered this question, but what consulting companies offer internships in Paris? Felix, could you talk a little bit about, if you remember, if you did an internship in Paris or worked in Paris?
Sure. I've spent a lot of time in Paris. I haven't worked there yet. Typically, all consulting companies offer internships. There's different categories of consulting companies, which you should probably do some research on. Essentially, there's the big strategy consultancies, and then there's the more operational consultancies, which is a big difference. I mean, the biggest brand names is basically for the strategy consultants is McKinsey, Bain, BCG. In Europe, very prominently, you have Roland Berger, where I'm working. You also have Oliver Wyman, or other companies such as Kearney. So these would be more the strategy consultancies. All of them offer internships. Some of them have requirements that you need to be studying a master's degree or already have a master's degree, although those are slowly decreasing. My company, for example, we had the requirement to be a master's graduate to get a job in Europe. And nowadays we also offer business analyst programs for full-time entry for bachelors, or internship opportunities as well for bachelors. And then you have the big four, which are traditionally, they used to be accounting firms. Now they have very, very large consulting arms. And you have also just a plethora of others, such as Accenture, et cetera. So you would have EY, KPMG, PwC, all of these firms, Deloitte, they all offer internships. Almost all of them offer internships for bachelors. I myself didn't do an internship at them. I started full-time job at EY, but a lot of my friends did do internships, especially at big four firms in Paris, specifically speaking about French students. And there, for example, PwC was a very common address to go to. And so, yeah, usually they'll start considering you towards your second or third year of your bachelor's, not necessarily the first year. But yeah, there's a lot of internship opportunities available.
Thank you. Let's
see. What level of English do you need to start your bachelor's degree? I don't know the precise score that you need on the test, but you need to be fluent in English. You need to speak it. Otherwise, you will struggle.
Yeah, I think Grace will answer this question in the chat for the exact levels, so that's easier for you to take note of it. But yeah, you would have to be fluent in English because the entire program is taught in English. And we require, a fluency in English. However, we also offer other languages like French and Spanish, if you would like to incorporate that in your studies as well. You have the opportunity to do that, but English is mandatory.
Yeah. Then I see a question, what kind of internships are there if you're entrepreneurial?
Yeah.
Bit of a tricky question, but essentially you can pick internships in whatever firm you'd like. What is quite common, it's to go to a startup, either a small startup or already a scale up that's a bit more established. Those are very traditional internships in your bachelor's. And especially these companies are a lot more flexible with hiring you without any internship experience. So there it's possible to get maybe a first year or second year internship already, rather than so for example, strategy consulting firms will usually only consider you if you've done some sort of consulting internship previously, or maybe like a startup scale up internship. So people, no matter if they're interested in being entrepreneurial afterwards, or if they're looking to go into a more corporate setting, often do start with internships at startups. So that would be my advice if you're entrepreneurial, to do that, or to go and do a consulting internship, because it teaches you how to work in a very structured manner, which can be very helpful. Very helpful if you want to become an entrepreneur. And then lastly, you have the opportunity of going to a venture capital fund and doing an internship there. I have several of my very close friends that did internships at a VC fund in Spain that have actually hired a lot of ESCP graduates recently. And that's also, so they're like a talent scout, which means you are the first funnel in getting from being a startup and getting VC funding. So it exposes you to a lot of different business models. So that might be another option.
Thank you. We have one question about whether it makes a difference for consulting firms, a BBA or a BSc.
No. Unless you want to disagree with me, I'm perfectly fine. Happy to agree to disagree. BBA and a BSc is a very small legal difference. I would say generally a BSc is seen as more prestigious because it does have a more mathematical and quantitative focus. So my personal opinion, and I think this is shared with a lot of my colleagues and a lot of our hiring managers, is a BSc is slightly more prestigious, although a BBA and a BSc is a very small difference. And I can tell you from the strategy organs of ESCP, there have been discussions about what the difference between the two are and what to pursue. And ESCP chose to go for the BSc because even though there's such a tiny difference, you're on the, let's say, positive side of the small difference. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Felix said, the program has a math base, and so you learn certain statistical, a basis for that, and therefore having a BSc will help out with that for sure.
Let's
All
see.
right.
There's a question about bachelor to master's programs. I don't believe that ESCP has any. But as we mentioned, there's a lot of schools that ESCP works closely with for exchanges. So those schools know ESCP, and ESCP is a top-ranked school. So you're not going to have any difficulties applying for a master's. And what, our student base, our alumni base is quite entrepreneurial. So similarly to how I'm pushing for there to be more bachelor ESCP grads at INSEAD, other colleagues of mine are doing the same with other schools, such as, ESADE, St. Gallen, etc. And so even though there might not be a formal bachelor to master program, as there might be in other institutions, although I don't know any in Europe, honestly, there is, close cooperation with other schools.
Thank you. We have a question about whether there's extra tutoring offered at ESCP if you're struggling in the subject. So from, what I understand the ESCP program to be, the classes are quite small, and therefore you are always welcome to reach out to the professor for extra help. If you're having any difficulty in the subject, you're more than welcome to, reach out to the professor. There's a lot of group that is assigned in ESCP, and so you will be collaborating quite a bit with your fellow classmates as well. And so any questions that you have with them, you're more than welcome to clarify. Felix, would you like to reflect a little bit on your experience?
So I mean, my experience is not representative. We were still a bit of a younger program, so our class size was smaller. It was more informal of people helping each other. And so on that front, not too many reflections besides long study sessions together in some office that we misappropriated to explain each other things. But now there's actually an association, a student association, which is called VP, who actually do it's an official tutoring platform basically, and it was founded by the current vice president of Agora, so the student union, and they are helping students study for midterms. They are helping students with remedial math courses, etc., especially in the beginning. So there is actually now real associations where people volunteer to help each other. So that's something you can take a look at. It's called VP Education, I believe. run by a guy named David. So there is again very entrepreneurial spirit to be helping each other. So yeah, maybe that's something for you. And I believe as well for some students that maybe don't have the required quant background when they're joining, there is like a prerequisite for some remedial classes to be done
Yes.
on especially math before you join B1. I believe they're run by the London campus. So there's also that in place.
Yeah, so when you actually submit your application to us, we will go over it, and if we feel like you might need a little bit of extra support when it comes to math, we will, register you for a math catch-up course the summer before you start ESCP. All right. Oh, how big are the classes in ESCP? So the number varies for sure. It depends on which campus you're in, but usually, I would not say our classes are bigger than 20 students.
Okay, I see a question. Are finance internship plausible via the Bachelor of Management? Absolutely. I don't have any good data on it, but there was certainly people that were working at kind of IB internships, investment banking, sorry, internships, or at venture capital funds. So if you're interested in more traditional high finance, there is some private equity and investment banking internships that are open, although it is a bit rare for like a Bachelor 2 student to be securing one of those. I think that's more of an end of study type of internship, especially if you've maybe secured some previous banking internships. So for example, there's all sorts of different, so you could do some corporate banking, etc. So I do have a friend, for example, she was working at BNP Paribas in the wealth management for an internship in B2, and then she went on to do a more traditional high finance, which I think you're referring to, internship at the end of her studies. So I think that would be the regular route, because some of these firms, they have been more used to doing like basically master level internships, but nowadays it's really end of study. They don't really discriminate on that anymore. So my advice, if you do want to do some finance internships, would be to start at some smaller firms or some less high finance, because private equity do tend to be, for example, very, very picky on your level of experience. They do want you to have like 2 or 3 internships previously.
Thank you. We have a question about whether we have apprenticeship programs. So actually in Paris in our last year, we offer a work study track, which means that you can work and study simultaneously. However, for this, you would need a native level French, so C1 French. And if you have that, you're more than welcome to join our work study program and opt for Paris as your last year campus.
Yeah. I see like a question several times about average salary of a grad. I don't know if we have statistics about that, to be perfectly honest. What I would more recommend you to do is there's big differences in terms of geography, especially even in Europe. So for example, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Germany tend to be, or Nordics, for example, tend to be quite high paying countries, despite the fact that we have very high tax rates. Whereas some of the Southern European countries tend to have some lower salaries. So my suggestion would be take a look at some firms that you're interested in and go on platforms such as Glassdoor and take a look at the entry-level salaries. Those are typically the ones that you will be getting. If you want to look at some firms, for example, in Paris that a lot of people go to, you have L'Oréal. There, for example, I know L'Oréal has an interesting practice of paying more to graduates of top schools such as ESCP. So I have a couple of friends working there, and actually as a result of having graduated from ESCP, they're having a higher salary band than some of their colleagues. So that's some positive news for you if you want to work in France and you graduate from ESCP. But I'm not sure if we do have some statistics. Either check the website or maybe Ara, but since the country differences plus there's so many master's students, it makes it a bit difficult to tell, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So we have quite a few data protection that is prevalent in the EU. So we typically try not to answer such questions. However, as Felix said, if you are curious about the average salary, feel free to go on Glassdoor. We would also be happy to share the data about where our graduates end up after graduating. So if you could write to us, unfortunately, I can't give you this data off the top of my head, but if you write to us, I would be happy to connect you to our career department. You can definitely have a conversation with them and see, where our graduates end up, and then do a little bit of research in that department. All right, there's for the campus in Paris for guaranteed. Okay, just before that, we actually have a question about, I would also like to know if there's some employment difference with your ESCP and your BSc and master students. I unfortunately don't understand this question well. Are you asking if our BSc students are more employable than the masters, or if you could clarify that question, that would be helpful. And we have one last question, which is for last year Campus Paris for the apprenticeship, is acceptance guaranteed? Can one go to the other two campuses? I understand your question. For this, I would kindly request you to actually reach out to us via email so we can get you in touch with our Paris campus and they can actually guide you through the process. Usually for us, the minimum requirement to get accepted into the Paris campus is that you speak fluent French. In terms of the apprenticeship program, they have their own process, so I would request you to reach out to us, and that way I can help you out. I also see that we have reached 4 p.m., so our webinar has come to an end. I would like to thank you one more time, Felix, for joining us and being here today and hosting the webinar with me. And I would also like to thank all of the participants who showed up, patiently waited while I sorted out the technical difficulties. I'm glad that we got through and that we had an interesting discussion. So thank you again. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we would be happy to help you or guide you to the department that can help you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Good luck in your applications.
Thank you.
See you.